Let's talk about internet security in TwinGate and what you can do to harden security for your end users that are connecting to your private resources, but are also connecting to things that really have nothing to do with TwinGates, and keeping all those actions secure and removing risk when it comes to your own infrastructure. So let's talk first about DOH. TwinGate offers both native DOH or DNS over HTTPS and DNS filtering. I think everyone pretty much knows what DNS filtering is about. It's about preventing users from accessing certain domains, making sure that they can't navigate to domains that have typos in them, Google with 3 O's, Microsoft with 2 T's, things that are created on purpose so they're not going to look too suspicious. And in some cases are going to be carbon copies of known websites, but are going to facilitate the download of malicious software. Now, DOH is different. DOH is there to encrypt DNS traffic because DNS by default is not encrypted. And so what happens on your machine is that if you connect to lego.com, lego.com not being an IP, your computer first needs to figure out what lego.com is and where its public IP is. And so your computer sends a request to a DNS resolver. If you haven't changed your DNS resolver by default, there's a very good chance that your DNS resolver is actually handled by your internet service provider, which means that because it's not encrypted, your internet service provider knows what you're navigating to. And that could be said also from any internet hotspot that you're connecting to that's not your own, where if the internet hotspot acts as a DNS resolver, then they know what is it that you're connecting to. And in itself, that can create some risk. So the very first thing you should do in TwinGate is you should activate DOH and possibly DNS filtering. And so we'll see how all of that is configured in TwinGate. But that's why DOH is so important. Again, TwinGate provides DNS filtering and DOH both as a native feature, but also as a third-party integration. So we'll see how both of those things are implemented in TwinGate today. To get started with internet security, the easiest thing to do is to head over to the Internet Security tab in your tenant and just click on Enable Secure DNS, which covers both DOH and DNS filtering, depending on how you configure it. Now, once you enable Secure DNS, you have the option to pick either a third-party DNS provider or you can benefit from TwinGate's own DOH and DNS filtering. If you go for a third party, let's start there. You can pick a resolver that primarily will only provide DNS over HTTPS. So Cloudflare does DOH, Google does DOH, OpenDNS and NextDNS also offer DOH. You can technically also provide a custom DOH resolver as long as it's a URL. And depending on what you're using here, if you're hosting your own DNS provider, you could technically do DNS filtering from here, knowing that, again, whatever URL you're going to paste here, all DNS queries for the TwinGate client, whether a user is trying to connect to a TwinGate resource or something else, is going to go to this resolver. And so if it's your own resolver, you could technically do DNS filtering in there as well. You can also do DNS filtering using the NextDNS integration. You'll notice that when you click on NextDNS, the button is to integrate with NextDNS, so you can actually provide a NextDNS API key for this. And that gives you a little bit more control. So those are the two exceptions that are going to allow you to do DOH and DNS filtering. The top three allow you to do only DOH, although there's another exception that I believe is in the documentation. I think you can do DOH with Cloudflare technically, because Cloudflare allows you to specify a custom DOH URL for its resolver. And so you could technically have a custom DOH resolver for Cloudflare that is going to do DNS filtering that you're going to integrate into the custom resolver here. So short version of all of this is if you go through third-party DNS, they'll all provide DOH, and some of them will provide DNS filtering depending on how they're configured. The second option away from all of that is by using TwinGate's own native DNS filtering and DOH ability. So if you click on TwinGate DNS filtering here, you'll see that it does DOH and DNS filtering. And if we enable it, it's instantaneously available to all clients that are connected to your tenant. And there's a couple of options that you can change here, right? So you could have a fallback method that is strict or automatic. Strict means that if you're filtering out a domain, and so the resolution fails, you're not going to bounce to another system DNS. In some cases, having it set to automatic means that the DNS filtering can be bypassed, which we don't encourage, so we recommend strict. You will also be able to you will be able to add groups that should not be under secure DNS. So that's if you add a group here, they will not be under the protection of DOH and DNS filtering. So we don't recommend using that, but in some cases you have to. And finally, we also offer the ability to explicitly allow some domains. This takes precedence over everything else. So if something in the allow lists, it will be allowed, even if it's in the block list somewhere else. The deny list is the opposite, so we're testing here with lego.com, and you'll soon have the ability to pick what categories we filter out, but just so you see, if you take a look at the DNS filtering ability, so we talked about all of that. Remember that we filter out some categories already based on known lists, Google Safe Browsing, protection around cryptojacking to prevent devices from unwittingly mining crypto, DNS rebinding, so public records that point to private IPs, domains that try to impersonate other domains by using either similar characters or just very easy to make typos in their name. There's a few more that are blocked as well. So all of that is blocked by default. You can't deactivate the security categories, although that will be available at a later time. And so if we take a look at the client here, and I try to go to lego.com, it is blocked. We don't currently have a splash page, but that is something that will be added at a later time. And that is pretty much how you configure DOH and DNS filtering in TwinGate at this time. Now, let's go to making DOH and DNS filtering protection persistent, because if you have your TwinGate client implemented the way, the default way, a user could connect out or log out of their clients. And if they're logged out of their client by default, then they're not under the protection of DOH or DNS filtering. So a lot of customers have asked us to provide a way to prevent users from disconnecting from the TwinGate clients and provide protection for DOH and DNS filtering should a user not be logged into their client to begin with. Part of that is already delivered and the rest is coming a little bit later. What you can currently do in TwinGate is you can deploy a very simple machinekey.conf file on Mac and Windows. It has this format with your tenant name and version 1. And if you deploy this file at that location for those operating systems, what it does is it removes the ability to log out of a client for a user. And therefore, it makes the protection of DOH and DNS filtering a little bit more persistent. That's only part of it though. The second part is that what you should also do on top of preventing the user from being able to log out is you should persist the TwinGate client process. So on Mac, you can use a launch agent, or you can add a keep alive parameter to the plist, which is a configuration file for the macOS client application for the TwinGate clients. If you do that, your operating system will make sure the client process is always running. And you can do something similar on Windows. You can have a detection script that will make sure the process is running and detect if it's not. And if it's not, trigger a remediation script, which will respawn the client if it's offline. The next version of DNS filtering that's coming out in a little bit will provide protection for DOS and DNS filtering, even if a user is logged off of the client So it'll bring yet another layer of security where no matter what your user is doing, they're protected by DOH and DNS filtering, even if they're not on the TwinGate client. And that is it for internet security.